Hi, everybody. Welcome to Two Out the First. It is March the 10th, 2026. I'm Ryan Ballinger. Great to have you here with us. We're doing a Tuesday show. It is Tuesday of the Players Week. It's the one and only event on the schedule that matters. Although, interestingly enough, Live Golf does have their event in Singapore this week. I think that's kind of a bold choice to decide to go up against the Players Championship, but also from a logistical standpoint, kind of makes sense that they're there because they were just in Hong Kong. And I know travel in Asia is not like straightforward, just a couple of hours type stuff. But staying in the continent, playing that event, getting it done, and then kind of taking a few weeks off, that makes more sense than skipping a week, forcing everyone to travel away from the continent back to the Middle East, even perhaps, where, things are obviously not going very well, and then having to come back to Asia, because that's wound up happening in Hong Kong. A lot of players who had competed in Australia decided not to go home to the United States for a few weeks, and a number of them went to Dubai and elsewhere, maybe in Abu Dhabi and the United Arab Emirates to kind of practice and just, kill time basically until they had to fly back to, the ANZ. Well, not ANZ, but, the Australasia area. And a number of them got stuck. Like there was a worry that a number of players couldn't make it. They were going to have to fly maybe from the UAE to Spain, and then maybe they couldn't get out of there. But somehow Jon Rahm arranged for a private jet that got in and got the players and got them over, which I think is fascinating and interesting. It's not a story that's going to be told a lot, but the guy did put himself out there, whatever his private jet situation was, so that players could come to that Hong Kong event, which, by the way, Jon Rahm then won. So Rahm got his first win on Live Golf since 2024. He didn't win at all last year. He was second in the first two events this year. And while that's nice that he won, and he won $4 million in 23 official World Golf Ranking points for the win, it also feels like that's setting up a story that will maybe take shape over the course of this year. Kind of like what happened with Joaquin Niemann, where Niemann won 5 events and then was horrible in the other 9, basically. But the 5 that he won, what seems to maybe be happening with Rahm so far, 3 events in, I guess we'll get a little bit more, another data point on that this week in Singapore, is he's either second or first in every tournament, and nobody else is even close. And if it weren't for Anthony Kim shooting, I think it was 64 in the final round in Adelaide, he probably would have won 2 of the 3, That's maybe not a good look for Live Golf if your presumptive best player just blows out everybody, when you're like, this is the second best tour in the world, and then Jon Rahm just wins everything or comes close, because whether the putts go in or not, he's going to be right there. I don't know that that's a good look. I think Liv would probably try to market it differently. Oh, it's Jon Rahm versus the world. Well, yeah, we knew that. We kind of knew that. That confirms your bias if you are, anti-Liv, where you go, all right, well, Brooks left. Bryson might be leaving if he doesn't get the money that he demands, which he can demand as much as he wants now. But if he doesn't get that, then it truly is Rahm versus Joaquin Niemann, I guess, who hasn't been particularly good so far. Not horrible, but not particularly good. And then Anthony Kim? Like, that's it? That's the tour? Forget it. Shut it down. Don't even bother. So I think that's a prevailing talking point we'll kind of get into this week. That's not one of the stories I want to cover. We're not going to go on it much longer than that. But I thought that was kind of interesting. So then we haven't talked since we had the crazy ending to the API with Akshay Bhatia catching Daniel Berger. Berger, kudos to him for making that 4 from 13 feet on the final hole of regulation to force extra holes. It looks like it was slipping away from him then and there, and he winds up going ahead and making the par to get to the playoff, but just couldn't get up and down from that 18th green at Bay Hill is so wide. It's way wider than you think it is, and that's a tough up and down because it's just turf. Like, do you want to try to carry it? Well, if it hits the firm turf and bounces away, you're doomed. You kind of have to bump it and run it. But then if you bump it and run it, it's a tough shot because it also is quick and you don't know if it's going to grab. So you got to make it run. It's a tricky shot, but the putt that he had, I would say, was like 7 feet for par. Never had a chance. Not up and out of it. Not hard enough. And then Akshay was very fortunate to be able to be in a position to par. The 72nd hole looked like his second shot was going to go in the water, and it winds up staying clean. He gets up and down really easily, hits the green in 2 after seeing what Berger did to hit the left side, not quite the green, but almost the left side of the green with his second shot on the first playoff hole. He easily 2 putts, which that's exactly what you're supposed to do in a match play situation. Set yourself up to not fail, let the other guy fail, and he wins. So he's a 3-time PGA Tour winner now. He won $4 million. Obviously a big moment for him to kind of prove he can win on a bigger stage. I mean, he knew it. He's been having a good year. Had a good run to win at Pebble Beach, and then obviously didn't wind up winning. He had a tough Sunday, but he was in there most of the way. He's been very good this year. So congratulations to him. For Daniel Berger, I'm sure he's heartbroken. He is a 3-time PGA Tour winner himself. He came back from 4 months off with a broken finger, which I didn't realize why he was out. I didn't remember this. I must have missed it somewhere in the fray. But he played the final 4 holes of whatever he played at the BMW Championship with a broken finger. He must have broke it on a shot. He said he was hitting a 7-iron, I think he said. And he broke his ring finger and then finished out the round. And he's like, oh, it's going to get better. It never got better. And he spent 4 months out with a broken finger. That's such a bad setback. I mean, the guy is a very good golfer. He's a good player. Seems well-liked. But unfortunately, he's just kind of been riddled with injuries in sometimes weird ways. And good to see him back. Hopefully he plays well, continues to play well. Golf's more interesting when straight vibing is part of things. So hopefully he continues to play well and build off of this, not take dejection from it, but take a positive that, hey, I'm back in the swing of things, almost had a chance to win a Siggy and do something with it. So now we're at the Players Championship this week, and it's the crown jewel event on the PGA Tour schedule. The course is no different than last year. They lengthened it 77 yards last year. They kind of made some minor tweaks, but a couple of holes, particularly the par 5s, they made longer. And it's a great golf course. It really is. I've been there a number of times over the years. Probably the last time I was there it's probably been 8 years since I've been to the Players. I don't cover a lot of golf tournaments in person anymore. As you may or may not know, I have kids. Not that you don't. A lot of people have kids, but they're at the ages where I like to coach a lot of their things. I like to be involved in their events. I like to see them do this stuff on the weekends, and golf happens on the weekends, and I'm willing to sacrifice going to those things, which I would enjoy seeing. I love covering the Players. It's a fun party. We just recorded our first episode of this year's Road to French Lick, which will have a little different format, but Brendan Sweeney, who's my co-host from French Lick Resort, is down at the Players, and it is a who's who. It's kind of like a Masters light, where like in the Masters, everyone who's anyone in kind of like the golf loving world, whether that's finance or politics or other sports, those people go to the Masters. They fly in their private jets by the hundreds, and that's where they get together. But like the golf world, the first real big gathering is the Players, and it is interesting to that and what that has kind of become over the years. It wasn't always that way. Definitely was not always that way, but it has become that over time. And it's a great tournament. If you ever get a chance to go, the PGA Tour really does pull out all the stops. They run it very well. They put a lot of stuff into play, into the works for fans, so they have a good time. The food is very good on site. Food and beverage is very good on site. The Ponte Vedra Beach area is sleepy 99% of the time, but that 1 week of the year, A1A, which is kind of the main road in and out of the area, is nutso, but it's a good time. So if you ever get the chance to go, I highly recommend that you go. It's hard to get to the Masters, right? It's not too hard to get to the Players, just getting a ticket, and you're going to have, it's not obviously quite the same, right? It's not Augusta National, and it's not, it's not the Masters, but for the money, it's about as close as it's going to get, and there are some extremely famous holes, and I think TV doesn't do it enough justice. That golf course has so many good holes. I mean, there are maybe only a couple holes that I find kind of weak. The opener is harder than it looks. It seems kind of weak, but the second hole is shockingly kind of smart. Third hole, fourth hole, fifth hole doesn't get enough credit. There's a lot of good holes in that golf course, and there aren't many weak ones. I still think they're trying to figure out whether what they did with number 12, making it a short par 4, was the right thing in the end, but they're not going to blow that up again. But the finish, the backstretch, 13 through 18 is just unbelievably good. Asks every question. You got to hit a draw. You got to hit a cut. You got to avoid water. You got to hit an accurate tee shot. You got to be able to play funnels. You got to be able to take a chance if you want to go for 16-2. You've got to know when to throttle back on 18 because you might hit it too far into the trees. It's just a really, really clever golf course. So that's that's kind of the rub this week on the Players Championship. And then I guess the next question is when, and we've talked about this for a couple of episodes now because it's kind of lingering, but Brian Rolap's going to talk tomorrow, Wednesday, give a State of the PGA Tour address, which is kind of the typical job of the commissioner, right? But Brian Rolap's not Jay Monahan. This is the first time he's going to be doing this in this role, in explaining truly to the press, gathered for this purpose, what is happening on the PGA Tour. I think when he did this at the Tour Championship in August, it was kind of a joint venture, and he didn't really have a lot of information, very new to the job, still very much getting his feet wet, and quickly made the determination, hey, we need less events, or we need more delineation so that we know the top players are competing in these specific events, but not these. But it doesn't seem like there's a whole ton of clarity about what the not these events are, because if you think about it, if there are 20 to 24 events that the top players compete in, and you have the 4 majors, right? So, let's say you play 24 events. Now you have 20 events that matter. You have 8 signature events. You have 3 playoff events. That's 11. Now and the players, that's 12. Now you need 8 more, right? So you need 8 more signature level events. I don't know where they're coming from. Meanwhile, on the FedEx Cup portion of the schedule, which I think the FedEx Cup's going to change pretty substantially, by the way, but in the FedEx Cup portion of the schedule, then you're going to have basically 15 events that are rendered obsolete. Well, what do you do with those? Well, the idea of having a secondary tier doesn't make sense for 15 events. If your secondary tier is smaller than your top tier, why are we doing this? It should be at least the same size. So how do you do that? Do you, as we've kind of suggested, modify the Korn Ferry Tour and make that combine with those events, and the Korn Ferry Tour purses go up? That's what I think is going to happen, but who knows? And it also sounds like for all the push that there was to have these changes come for the 2027 season, they're going to happen over time. And there's a reason for that. A bunch of reasons. One, there's a TV contract that runs through 2030. It's got to be negotiated, a renewal of. And by the way, if you change the format of the PGA Tour, that's going to have to change substantially within that contract itself. They might have to break down that contract and render it void now so that the networks know what they're getting, and all that stuff. Versant is its own thing now, so all that stuff's going to change too. But also, you've got these contracts that run for years, although I can tell you from some experience that those contracts are not worth the paper they're written on in some cases. And then you've got to figure out, all right, well, some events you're going to ask to spend less money. That's an easy sell, perhaps, if they like the return, for half the money. But for the events that you might want to keep from the Korn Ferry Tour, if you were going to do this, you got to convince some of them to spend more. So what's that going to look like? Or how does that all play out? I don't know. We'll see. I don't think we're going to get the full thing here. I don't think we're going to get the full layout of what's happening. I don't think they know it yet, because I still think they're fighting those battles with the players themselves. And I think Brian Rolap kind of thought, hey, we need to create scarcity to appeal to our fans who want to know, Scotty, Rory, Xander, Colin, those people are playing when they're playing, and when it's on TV that they're playing, right? And I get that, but that is not really how the economy of professional golf works at the PGA Tour level, and they need to figure out a way to kind of unravel that quickly, and you can't do it quickly. It's just not going to happen quickly. It's going to take time for that to happen. So we'll find out more about that on Wednesday. And then this is really isn't a two of the first in the true sense. So we have 2 stories to talk about, kind of a recap of things over the weekend. But the other thing that I thought was interesting that came up out of API, and we didn't get to talk about it on Thursday, was the comments from Rory McIlroy about Jon Rahm, and Jon Rahm's thoughts on being, quote-unquote, extorted by the DP World Tour to make a deal to play 2 more events than the required 4 in exchange for not having to pay fines moving forward for competing on Live Golf. So you could have your releases if you play 2 more DP World Tour events. We still want you to pay the fines that you owe us, and by all accounts, Live Golf would happily pay those for Jon Rahm. But Rahm says, no, I don't want to play 2 more DP World Tour events that they get to pick. That's horrible. And Rory's asked about it. I think it was after Tuesday or Wednesday at Bay Hill, and he's like, I thought it was a pretty good deal. And he really put it, I know people have kind of this visceral reaction one way or the other to Rory McIlroy and what he says, but for him to say, yeah, that deal is better than what Brooks Koepka took to come back to the PGA Tour. That's true. That's really a good way of putting it, to be honest. So to be Ryder Cup eligible and still play Live Golf and not be fined moving forward, you play 2 events that they determine you get to play. And they're not going to pick duds. It's not going to be like, we're going to send you to the events in South Africa for $1.3 million purses co-sanctioned with the Sunshine Tour. They're not doing that. They're going to send him to European events where he can sell tickets. Like he's going to go play the French Open and, I don't know, Switzerland, something like that. Like that's what's going to happen. It's not going to be some alternative where he goes and plays the 2 lowest monetary value events on the schedule. It's not happening. They would pick good events for him to play. They just want him to play a little bit more if they're going to give him this unconditional release, which kind of flies in the face of what they already won in arbitration against Westwood and Garcia and Ian Poulter, those guys. So I think it's a pretty good deal. And I agree with Rory. I don't agree with Rory on everything, but I agree with him here that this is a good deal. And there's a reason Rahm should take it. There's a reason Tyrrell Hatton took it. And that's primarily because he wants to be on the Ryder Cup team. And Hatton, who did not play well at Live Hong Kong, but he wants to be on that squad. And the only way you can be on the squad is if you're a DP World Tour member as a European-born player. So make do, make it work, and go play 2 more weeks. And I think I mentioned this before somewhere, but you could just tank. Just go fire up 274s. Oh, man, I didn't play very well. Must have slept weird on the mattress in the hotel or whatever the heck. And get out of there. How is that an inconvenience to your life, right? You play fewer events now because you play the 14 live events, the 4 majors. That's 18. You used to play 20 to 24. Go play 2 more on the DP World Tour, and then you've got to play 4 more. So that's 6. You're going to play 24 times. That's really not that horrible. It's really not that bad. If that's your line of demarcation, then you really don't want to be on the Ryder Cup team at that point. And it's not a point about principle. It's a point about you not wanting to do something and demanding that everyone just give in to your point of view. And that is not going to work. It's worked for him on Live because he got what he wanted. He got the contract he wanted. He got them to change it to 72 holes. It's clearly working for him because he's second, first so far in 3 events. And now he's kind of this coddled stage where he wants to get a little bit more. And the DP World Tour is like, no, this is not you. This is not about you. Great that you're a part of it, but this isn't about you. And they want to make that stand. And I have a feeling that it wasn't just the DP World Tour. It was probably Luke Donald who said it too. It was like, I love the guy, but need to make a point. We're going to prove a point here. And show him what it's about. And if he doesn't get it, we don't need him. Because guess what? They probably don't. Americans haven't won on the road in the Ryder Cup since 1993. And they don't have a captain right now. And who knows which Americans are going to show up for that. I mean, I can tell you some of them, but I can't tell you half of them. So I can tell you pretty much all the Europeans. They're pretty much the same. So, plus or minus a Højgaard or swapping out a Højgaard, that's probably the team. The one you just saw that won at Bethpage is probably about the same. Maybe Justin Rose doesn't make it, but I doubt that too. He already won this year, so he's apparently in good enough form. I know the team's not picked this year, but still. So it's a tough one to figure out. I get it, but I think this is the right move for the DP World Tour, and they're doing the right thing, kind of telling Jon Rahm to kick rocks until he figures it out. And if he wants to play, he'll play. If he doesn't, then if they fail, the Europeans have a real easy scapegoat. Hey, this Jon Rahm fella, if he had just played 2 more events like we asked him to, then we maybe might have beaten the Americans again. And now you've ruined Luke Donald winning a third Ryder Cup in a row, doing something unprecedented in the history of the competition for either side. Thanks, Jon Rahm. Like, do you want that hanging over you if you're Jon Rahm? I don't think you do. I don't think you want that, because if you set foot in Europe anywhere, any golf-loving person would be like, boo, you ruined our chances at a three-peat. So, that's an interesting one. I think all the momentum is on the side of the DP World Tour on this one. All right, that's going to do it for the show today. Again, back Thursday. Try to do Saturday. We've got the players this week. It is the only thing on the schedule. There's nothing else other than Live Golf Singapore, which time change-wise, just going to be kind of hard to talk about with any kind of context anyhow. And we'll save that for the end, maybe next Tuesday. Shout out to Miang Lee, who won for the third time on the LPGA in China on Sunday. First win in 8 years, 12 years after her first. That's a pretty cool redemption story. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of people got to hear it just because of the time change here in the States, and it wasn't the best field that they had of their Winter Asian Swing. They're back in the United States in a couple weeks. And then, not this week, but next, shout out to Zach Johnson for becoming the 22nd player in the history of the PGA Tour Champions to win in their first event on the 50-plus circuit. He won the James Hardy Pro Football Hall of Fame Invitational. Won that in Boca Raton, Florida. Congrats. They beat Stuart Sink by, I think, 4 shots. So, big deal for him. To get George McNeil, by the way, who's now 50. He's playing well, who's probably going to be an interesting character on that tour. So congrats to him. Also, congrats to Dan Bradbury, who's now a 2-time Joburg Open champion, who won that event in Johannesburg. He beat out Casey Jarvis by a shot. The South African was going for a third consecutive win on the DP World Tour. Missed it by 1 stroke. Pretty incredible stuff. He's basically in position to get a PGA Tour card next year as a result of these 3 weeks. Not quite there, but pretty darn, because they're not Rolex events. Like Patrick Reed got 1,335 points for that. Casey Jarvis basically got 1,335 points for the last 3 events that he played. 2 500-point wins and 300 some odd points, probably, or close to 300 points for second place T2. So he is a 3 for 1 there, but he's pretty close. He's in a good spot to get a PGA Tour card for 2027. Pretty cool stretch of time for him. And then this week, I did not mention this, but it is worth watching. I'm going to watch it. Hopefully it's on Golf Channel late in the night. The Women's Australian Open is being played this week. For the last couple of years, they had it joint, men's and women's, and also All Abilities Championship together, which I liked, but I don't think the women liked it to a degree because it kind of messed up their schedule. Not a lot of players couldn't play. And it felt like it was just an also-ran to the Australian Open for men. So they've separated those out. I think that's probably the right thing in the end. I like the idea. It just didn't work out. So that's this week. You got Hannah Green and Minjee Lee. Good tournament this week, with a couple high-profile names competing in Australia. So if you do want to watch that, I'm sure it'll be on Golf Channel somewhere, somehow. All right, back with another show on Thursday. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. Get a hold of me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com, on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, sort of X, but not really, and I've posted there in a couple months. But I'm at either Ryan Ballengee Golf, or on Blue Sky, ryan.thegolfnewsnet.com, and then Golf News Net's on all the social media services at the handle Golf News Net. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you on Thursday right here on 2 Off the First.